Hi, friends. Welcome back to Sorta Awesome. I'm your host, Meg Teets. I am so happy to be joined today by my dear, dear friend, my longtime co-host, your dear friend in that wonderful parasocial way, Kelly Gordon. Hi, Kelly.
Awesome. It's so good to be here.
It's so good to be here with you. You look so pretty in pink today.
It's
Just,
kind of it's the last day of summer sort of weather here in the Midwest
yeah.
on the day that we're recording
Hmm.
it. It's still really, really warm and then much cooler, more fall-like weather is coming in. So that
Yeah.
bodes well for everybody in the southern half of the US who is like, oh my word, this summer will never end. It's been so hot. So I'm enjoying like one more day of like really summery looking and feeling clothes before we make the
Yeah.
switch. It always feels like up here in the north. I would actually love to hear from our Canadian awesomes. Like
Yeah.
September hits, and it's not like it's never going to be warm again, but like there's a definite shift in the air. Maybe we
Mm.
just notice it, but you're like all of a sudden it starts to get those cool nights, and you're like, I might need a sweatshirt, and it'll be warm enough to get rid of it in the afternoon. But it's coming. If it's coming for us sooner rather than later, it's got to be coming for those of you who are like, please. I'm already
Please
drinking
help
my
me.
pumpkin spice latte, but I'm happy to
And
have it
sweating.
iced.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes, we're still a good month away
I
from
know.
those
I'm
chilly,
sorry.
but that's okay. It's okay. We here in the US just celebrated Labor Day, and that means in our family, we're coming to the conclusion of the birthday run that
Yes.
starts in June in my family, with my daughter AJ's birthday, which is this week. She's turning 16. I know sometimes I feel like I almost want to like give a disclaimer to the people. AJ is not on my social media very much. She's not as much in the conversations. She is very much a loved and treasured child. She's just very, very,
Yeah.
very private. Like her
Yeah.
dad is very private, but even more so, just very private. And so okay. And so I respect that. I honor that. But
Yeah.
at the same time, it is her birthday and she's turning 16 this week. So we've got like birthday stuff and just teenage stuff on the mind here. So I was like,
Yeah.
Kelly, what about we kind of have tossed around this idea in the past, like letters to ourselves in prior
Mhm.
phases, seasons of life. And so I threw at you like, what if we did like a dear me at 16 kind of
Yes.
conversation? And so you were up for it. I'm so
Oh,
excited.
so up for it. Yeah, you know what? You just reminded me, and I haven't done any research on this as far as where this cultural phenomenon comes from, but the idea of the 16th birthday, especially for girls, it was that
Mhm.
sweet 16 idea.
Yes,
So I don't
yes.
know, like a quinceañera, like that has more cultural significance. I don't know
Yeah,
what the sweet 16 in like a European white
I
American
know.
culture comes from. I feel like a lot of times when I was growing up, like 16 is when you could start to date. Like
Oh,
that
okay.
was like,
Mhm.
and that was kind of what it was about. But I think back to when it was really a thing, like I feel like it was like a 50s, 60s thing. People got
Oh,
married like
yes.
at 18. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like they got married out of high
yeah.
school. So I don't know. But it is like a big birthday. It feels like it's momentous. It's like a milestone.
It is. It is. And my 16th birthday was my star birthday because I was born on June
Okay.
16th. And so I threw myself a star themed
Oh,
16th
fun.
birthday in my parents' house. It was not fancy. It was not like, remember MTV used to have that? I think it was called My Sweet 16 or something, that reality
Yes.
show, and people like huge over the top. That was not what I had.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
very homemade and DIY, but
Yeah.
I
Me
had
too.
all of my friends and their friends, and it was a big party at my parents' house when I turned 16 because I made it a big deal.
Yes.
So
I did too. So when I turned 16, I was super into like the 1950s, 60s. So I threw like a
okay.
1950s themed
Oh,
birthday party. And we
fun.
had like guys and girls, which was a big deal. Like that.
Yeah.
I'm the oldest, very conservative family. Like these were all friends from church. So that helped. But like
Hmm.
it was a mixed gender party. We made different like flavored Cokes. I think that we watched West Side Story. So it's like,
Oh, how
but
cute.
yeah, I really wanted people to
Yes.
dress like we didn't have the money or the opportunity to like all wear poodle skirts. But like that was kind of
Right.
like I wanted to make it like this old school sort of 1950s Sweet
Yes.
16
Oh,
party. So
Kelly, I love it.
that's the only party I remember though of my teen years. And it was for sure I
Hmm.
didn't have a party most years. But like
Yeah.
again, for my 16th, I was like, this is a big deal. I'm doing something. And it wasn't fancy,
Yes.
like you said. We watched, I
Yeah.
think we had to rent a VCR from the library still because we didn't own one. You could rent one in a big suitcase back then and like pop up this big window that you would put the big cassette. So it was very, like you said, DIY, but still I remember it. So here we are. We're going to talk about stuff like this, right?
We are. So we're going to do a little trip down memory lane and talk about who we were as people when we were 16. And we are absolutely inviting you, Awesome, as you are listening, to do the same. Think back to when you were 16. What was your life like? What were you into? And then we are going to talk about, like, what would we tell ourselves? Here we are, all these years later. What would we tell ourselves that we, who knows if we would have listened or not, but what would we say to our 16-year-old selves? So we have all of that coming up today on Sorta Awesome. Welcome back, Awesomes, to the show that is all about helping you be smart, strong, and social. If you are looking for a community of women who are going to support you no matter what age or stage of life you're in, whether you're 16 or 96 or anywhere in between, we are here to support you. And one of the huge ways that we do that is actually not just through the podcast, although we do love to support you through the podcast every Friday here at Sorta Awesome, but also in our social media communities. Come over to Instagram. If you're looking for more awesome in your Instagram feed, come find us at Sorta Awesome Show over there, or come over, or I should say, do all of the things. Come and find us on Facebook in the Sorta Awesome Hangout. We would love to have you join us there. Thousands of women who show up daily to support and cheer each other on and answer questions and give recommendations. So much good stuff. Kelly, one thing I've been doing in the So Awesome Sunday newsletter, which, by the way, go sign up for that if you want to. It's a every other week newsletter that I write for the Awesomes. And one thing I've been doing is highlighting what's happened in our community, because number one, that community moves so quickly. It's so easy to miss things. Yeah. But number two, there's so much good stuff. Like some things, even if you read it, you might want to go back and revisit. So every Sunday when I'm writing that, it's like I said, every other week, I'm going through and like looking through these threads and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how is this free? Yes. Like there's so much good stuff in here that I would pay for. There's so
to find
many
a place that's like wholesome. You know what I mean? Like that is that we're actually really trying to live into the sort of awesome ethic that you have always laid out here, which is this like very supportive. We're not here to rant and rave. This isn't like a great place to bring your grievances or your these are all the things that are going wrong in my life, or I can't believe this person did that. Like, no, we really want it to be like an encouraging space, a safe space, a place where it's genuine. And I think people sense that. You're right. It is. That's why when people get in there, they're like, what? This is just here for the taking. Yeah.
And that's not to say that we don't allow people to bring in like the hard stuff, because I do think that is one of the key things. Is it is a safe place where people can bring questions, ask for feedback on situations that they may not feel comfortable with an in-person community talking about. Yep. And so we always encourage people and have kind of created this culture rather than it being like a place to go and just like rant about something that's pissing you off, it's more like, hey, I have this thing, it is agitating me, or I am deeply concerned about this, and just kind of like ask for feedback, and people will just jump in the comments with constructive ideas, validating that, yeah, this seems off or whatever the thing is, but also with like actual practical directions that you might want to take. So
that's my favorite thing. Yeah, it's not that we don't address the hard things in life. Yeah, it's that it's just not a place to be complainy or whiny.
Right.
Because that's what the rest of a lot of social media is. Yes.
Yeah.
It's just kind of that negativity of people. So it's not that. But of course, real life is often really hard. So we help each other with that. Yeah, it's cool. Absolutely. It's a great, really, truly, if you've been listening to this podcast and you're not in the Sorta Awesome Hangout, I love that you recap those threads, Meg, because I am in there a lot, because that's all I have on my Facebook feed, right? Is only Sorta Awesome stuff. So I don't have any, like many longtime listeners know, that I have like shut down. I don't have anybody on my feed anymore personal. Like I unfollowed everybody. So the only
queen of Facebook right here.
Yeah, and it took a long time, and it was before. It was like in 2015. So I don't know. I had some sort of premonition, but like doing that freed up my feed. So now it's just Sorta Awesome. So I see a lot of stuff, and I still miss things. that happen
Mm-hmm.
in Sorta Awesome Hangouts. So you always highlight the good threads. Yes, definitely come and join us there. It's one of the best things about the podcast.
Yeah, it really is. Okay. Well, speaking of the podcast, Kelly, before we do our deep dive into nostalgia and thinking about who we were at 16 and what we would like to tell our 16-year-old selves, let's go ahead and start this show the way we always do with our Awesomes of the Week. Awesome of the Week is the moment in the show where we stop and talk about whatever it is that's making life a little bit more awesome right now, whether it is a book or a TV show, music, movie, podcast, product, recipes, just whatever's bringing that gold sparkle to our days. Kelly, my friend, what do you have for us this week?
So I have something that is truly revolutionary to me. At this time of year, I have just learned that you can take some, not all, produce from the farmer's market when we're here in this rich time of everything is being grown, everything is there. If you have a garden, if you go to a farmer's market, a lot of that can just be put straight in the freezer. Like you
Oh,
don't
like
have
no
to
prep or
process it.
anything?
Yes. So
What?
somebody told me this last fall. I wanted jalapenos. Like I think it was like near the end of the season, and they were like, just take the whole. Like I often would be like, I only need like 4. I don't need 30 in the basket.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were like,
Mm-hmm.
just take them and then just throw them in the freezer. And I was like, what? And they're like,
Say what?
literally,
We don't
just
have
put them
to.
in a Ziploc bag, put them in the
What?
freezer.
You don't have to like prep it and can it and.
No, or I mean, maybe wash it and dry it, but like I
Okay.
didn't even go to that step. I'm going to be honest and just say I didn't even. And then all winter long, when I needed a jalapeno, I just took one out, and like because they're small in particular, I just chopped it up, put it in the chili, in the soup, in the eggs, whatever I was using it for. Boom.
What? Okay.
So I can personally attest that I have tried this with jalapenos. The reason this just came up is I was so thankful for it because you do have a lot of produce coming in all at the same time, and even people who are really big canners, which the only thing I've ever made is jelly. Like I have not like canned anything for real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's so much work all at once. They're like I'm picking like half a bushel of tomatoes a day. Oh my gosh. Even tomatoes, you guys. People are like, you can stick that straight in the freezer.
A whole tomato?
A whole tomato. So now, of course, it's not going to be like sandwich worthy. These are going to be tomatoes that you're going to be putting in soup or in
Right.
stews, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they're
Mm-hmm.
like, if you put a whole tomato in, a big, juicy, like beefsteak tomato, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
have all that liquid in there. So that for sure, soup. They said aroma tomato, things that are smaller, they're going to hold their shape a little bit better. So just so you know, as you're thinking about it, but you don't have to peel them. You don't have to process them.
Oh
They take
my
up more
gosh.
space, of course, than
Yeah.
like if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
cook the tomatoes down if
Mm-hmm.
you're doing that.
For sure.
But you could just be like, I'm done. I can't deal with processing another tomato, or I've eaten all the tomatoes and I'm done. Put them in a Ziploc bag. And people have said that if you can either take the skin off as it's cooking in the soup. So they're like, if you put a whole tomato in a soup or a stew, as it's cooking and breaking down, the skin will like separate, like it'll cook down. So you can
Mm-hmm.
just then go through and be like, I'm just going to pull the skin out.
Mm-hmm.
Or they said you put it in hot water right after it comes out of the freezer and the skin comes right off.
Wow. Okay.
So
This
this
is
it,
news you can use right here.
exactly. I feel like the other thing that I really, really love to buy at the farmer's market at this time of year, poblano chilies. And
Oh,
I have
yes.
several soups. So last year, this is the other thing that I started to think about. I did cut these up because they're so much bigger and I don't usually need a whole poblano to put in whatever I'm putting. So I did dice, I don't know, 20 poblano chilies one day and then put them all cut up in the freezer. But again, I did not skin them. I did not like process them at all. I just cut. And then when I'm ready, I can just, break off a chunk, throw it in the soup, and it's
Yes.
ready. And so then, I don't know, some of those things, like, I mean, a lot of produce, it goes bad, right? So even if I'm
Oh,
buying
yes.
jalapenos from Aldi in the winter, it's like sometimes
Yeah.
they're bad. So this just like it's always there. It's like having a can of crushed tomatoes in your closet,
Mm.
in your pantry. It's always there. It's just like,
Yeah.
okay, it's there, it's ready for me. I don't have to think about that. That's what this is like, and it gives you a way to use it. So the other things you'd have to Google and see what other things there are. I know corn you can cut right off the cob. You don't have to cook it. You can freeze it to put in soup. Um, so I know some things like zucchini doesn't freeze great. Don't try to
Mm.
freeze zucchini.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to, if you have like, well, I have a lot of this, Kelly. Well, you can come
Yeah.
find me. I'll help you do the research. But like, you'd have to look at it. What I could attest to though are jalapeno, poblano, and then now I have been told tomatoes. So just say it. If
All
you've got
right.
a abundance, or you're seeing at the farmer's market lots of time this time of year, they're like, this whole basket is $5. Please take it away. Maybe it's something you want to consider. And then we can keep that summer
Yeah.
goodness all year. That's the other thing that makes me happy is when I take my little jalapeno out of the freezer in January, I'm
Yes.
like, hello, my friend. We last saw each
Yes.
other in August. I do talk to my food.
Of course. Of
Of course I
course
do.
you do. And that is part of the secret of being an amazing cook like you are. Talk
Is
to the
liking
food.
all these things. Yeah, this is truly,
Yeah.
it's like, it feels like an awesome for even more than a week, but it made me so happy to know
Yes.
that you can do all of this with so
Absolutely.
little work and still reap the benefit of having all this good, yummy produce all year round.
I'm totally into it. Thank you. You
Yeah.
literally just changed my life in
Okay,
a
good.
small but important way. So thank you for that.
You bet.
My
What you got?
awesome of the week this week is a docu-series that just reached its series conclusion on HBO Max, or I guess we're supposed to call it Max now.
Okay.
It's called How To with John Wilson. Do you know this show?
I don't
I
think I've
feel
even
like
heard
this
of
is
it.
so up your alley.
Okay.
I almost was like, did Kelly tell me about this when it first came on? Because this is so you, it's so me. Let me tell you all about
Okay.
How To with John Wilson. Okay, so again, it is on Max.
Okay.
Okay. The series finale just came out last week, which is what I think put it on my radar. I don't watch, there's not like a lot of shows. We do have a lot of streaming services, Kelly, but HBO
Preach.
hasn't been one that I've just like really kept on. It's one of those I kind of bounce back and forth with. So somehow I missed this. This actually came out in 2020, has 3 seasons, just wrapped up. And How To with John Wilson is truly a storytelling docuseries. I love storytelling in any vehicle that I can get it. I keep raving to everyone in my life about how good PJ Vote's new podcast Search Engine is.
It's on
like
my
sort of
list.
yes, it's sort of a spiritual successor to Reply All, which, you know, was ostensibly about stories from the internet, but it was really about stories about people.
Sure.
And that's what Search Engine is doing as well. I mean, I think about like Anthony Bourdain's work, his series that he did, even Somebody Feed Phil, which is, again, ostensibly about food, but it's really about the people who in the culture of the food. I love storytelling. I happen to prefer nonfiction storytelling, real human storytelling. It is catnip for me. So here is the conceit. Here is the idea with How To with John Wilson. John Wilson is a documentary maker living in New York City, and he has these episodes that are like how to this, and it's not instructional at all though. Okay. So like the very first episode is how to make small talk.
Okay.
And it starts out with how he's like this very socially awkward person and small talk's really hard, and he like kind of is both instructing himself and instructing the viewer, I guess, in how to not be awkward with small talk, even though he's showing how awkward he is with small talk the whole time. But then the storytelling takes a turn. He finds himself accidentally crashing MTV Spring Break in Cancun. Like he genuinely did book through a travel agent, booked a trip to Cancun. He gets there. His resort is hosting MTV Spring Break, which I did not even know they still did in this present era. And it turns into like this thing of meeting somebody and then going beyond small talk and what is revealed when you go beyond small talk. It's like so good. I was in tears by the end. One of the things that he does that I think just like from a narrative standpoint is so interesting. He always starts every episode with "Hello, New York." And it's like this idea of he's just making like a little something for his neighbors, literally in his neighborhood. Like, you don't know how to do something here, I'll teach you how to do it. And he might start in New York, but it definitely is very universal and very global. He also keeps I always think about language so much as a words lover. He keeps the tense either in first person, like I, and he's like telling stories, but he also uses you a lot. Yeah. So it has this incredibly conversational feel. Yeah. And even though he's a documentarian, the videography that you're watching as he's narrating it is like so like choppy and just feels like a kid took their camcorder out on the street kind of thing. But also, I need to say this, that you might be tempted to just kind of let this be a background show, and it could be like a background show while you're doing other things. However, if you actually sit and watch this the way I did, and I'm only in the first season right now. Like I
Okay.
said, I just now found out that it was on and it's over. So I'm still in the first season. The shots that he pairs with the writing, with his narration, are freaking hilarious and so unexpected and so captivating. And just like, you have to, I would encourage you
Yeah.
to actually watch and not just kind of like zone out and like have this on while you're folding laundry or whatever, which you could do. But truly, what he pairs visually with what he's saying is just top notch, incredible. I love this show so much. I cannot believe that I'm just now discovering it, but and it's kind of hard to describe it because it kind of seems like it's stories about New York, but then it's really global, and it seems like it might be about like how to learn how to do something, but it's actually about how are we doing this? How are we co-humaning this planet together? So again, it's called How To with John Wilson. It is on Max. There are some scenes and things that are it's definitely adult. It's made for adults, is what I'm saying. It's not don't watch it with your kids. But it's just really good. I don't know. I can't believe I'm so excited to be the person to tell you about this, because I think that if you watch this, you'll be like, oh, I get it.
Well, and I've never even heard of it. So especially for this to have been the third season. So when you say it's done, you're saying the third season's done, not necessarily the whole show is done.
Oh, no, it's done. He brought it to an end.
Oh,
he's
three
seasons.
Okay, so
yes,
there's 3
1,
seasons,
2, and 3.
like Ted Lasso. Yeah. We're over now. Okay, so you've got to go into it knowing that like everything that you could watch is out there, which some people like because they like to binge.
Yeah.
You know, like feel like they get the whole arc. Okay, very cool. Thank you so much. I feel like you know, when you go into fall, all the Academy Award movies normally would start to, you know, hit theaters. And so it's like you shift from this like very bubblegum sort of like stuff that doesn't have to enter your brain much. You could just kind of float on the surface of. And then we're like, okay, I'll do something a little meatier. I feel like this is a good transition. You know, where it's not, it doesn't feel like you're picking up War and Peace, but it's something that's going to touch you. So it's not just a sitcom, you know.
And exactly. And every single episode is self-contained. So this totally could be something you start now, and maybe it takes you like a year to watch it, but you just watch it when you actually have some time to sit down and just kind of like be in an experience. So yeah, that's very cool. So good. So good.
And it's only 3 years old. I feel like for so many of things, for me, I'm like usually a decade behind. So I feel like as I'm getting closer to like empty nesting, like I'm getting back into, I'm only 3 years behind pop culture now. It's pretty good.
Okay, those are awesomes of the week for us this week. We would love to hear what's awesome in your life. So come and find us on social media. You again can find us at Sorta Awesome Show on Instagram, or come over to Facebook and the Sorta Awesome Hangout. We'd love to have you join us there every Friday. We talk about what's awesome in your life. So Kelly and I are going to do a little nostalgia deep dive back to when we were 16. We're going to get to all of that when we come right back. Okay, we are back. And like I said at the top of the show, this week, Kelly and I are doing a little trip down memory lane and thinking about who we were as people. This is all inspired by my daughter celebrating her 16th birthday. Who were we as people as we were on this planet as 16-year-olds? Kelly, set the stage for us. What year was it when you were 16? And just like tell us all about Kelly at 16. What were you into? How did you spend your days? Tell us everything.
Tell us everything. I had to go back in my brain quite a bit. I in some ways, I almost wish like we're 5 years apart in age. So this is going to give a little bit of perspective, but it would be so fun to have people who, you know, were 16 in the year 2000 or, you know, whatever. Into, because my year, I turned 16 at the very beginning of 1988.
Okay.
So I kind of was like, I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, like, as I was picturing where was I was like, okay, so I was in the middle of my sophomore year of high school. Okay. So that helped to ground me. So it's like, so 87, 88. Because when you look at things, maybe like you didn't have to do this. I did. I was like, what was popular in those years? I'm Googling things.
Oh, I had to look them up.
Okay.
Because I just sort of like, I just think of like the 90s. Yes. But I was like, no, but specifically.
Yes, exactly.
16, what was I into? Yes.
But like, most of the hit songs of 1988 came after my birthday. So it's kind of like, I'm going to look at both, you know, like I'm like, what would have been in that era.
Yeah, just that year. Tell us about that
Yes.
whole year for you.
Well,
Yes.
and here's the thing is I was like, this really is, it's true of all of my like childhood, teen, early young adult years, is it is impossible to overstate how everything about me was rooted in the white evangelical Christian subculture. Like, my dad is a pastor. I only know people from my church. I up until my sophomore year of high school, I had only gone to Christian school,
Mm.
except for one brief period, like while we were moving, I was in a public school for a few months. Like I really, even though I can look at 1988 and I look at a picture of myself and I'm like, I'm wearing in many ways what would have been popular, not as popular as I wanted to be, like the clothes,
Sure.
not as trendy,
Yes.
because I'm the oldest of a very conservative family. And so they were like, no. And
Oh,
also,
yeah.
no, we're not spending that money. Like, up until I was probably 14, my mom was making my clothes.
Yeah.
And I was like horrified because, you know, like everybody was wearing Guess jeans.
Guess
And my
jeans.
parents
Oh
were
my
like
gosh,
$50.
the absolute chokehold that Guess jeans
Yes.
had on a big segment of my life.
Yes, exactly. That's what I mean. Like, I wanted them so desperately. They were $50 from what I remember. And my parents were like,
Oh,
that is your
yeah.
entire Christmas budget. Like, if you want one pair of clothes because of a little triangle patch on the butt that you can then put your comb in.
The triangle.
The triangle.
Yes.
Like, and I was desperate. I did at one point buy with my own money, not Guess, but it was some knockoff pair, but it had the triangle on the butt.
Yeah.
You know, like it was some other label. But I was like, close enough, you know, because I so desperately wanted to be in fashion. But what I would have been wearing in those years was acid wash jeans.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I mean, they're back, you know, right? So you can even find those. If you don't know what I'm talking about,
Totally.
go to Target. Shoulder pads.
Oh, yes.
You guys, I actually had
serious.
forgotten. I think that because everything that's old has become new again, we went to a store recently with my 15-year-old daughter and there was a shirt with shoulder pads in it. And she was like, what? I don't even know what's happening. Like, what is this thing here? And I was like, Taylor, I don't know that I had like freestanding shoulder pads that I could put in things that didn't have shoulder pads. They made those. But I was like, everything, but maybe even t-shirts. Like oversized t-shirts, which were oversized everything, like the shirts, right? But I'm like, everything I owned has shoulder pads. Everything.
Absolutely, yes.
So, yes, I wore a lot of pastel clothes because it was the era. Like, we kind of moved from the neon of like the 84, 85.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time we were getting to like 87, 88, you're in more of that like mint green Miami Vice era.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Lots of pink, lots of colors of pink. In fact, I remember a shirt that I had. It was like a Oxford sort of shirt with the stripes. I feel like there was a name for that. Like the striped, like there was tons and tons of striped shirts that usually you wore with a sweater vest over.
I'm having a flashback to like an elementary school picture where I think I had that very outfit. Yes.
So that would have been like a little earlier than 16 for me. But by the time I was 16, I know I had this one. It was like a combo shirt, you know, so the sweater vest was a part of the shirt. It wasn't like something you put on top of it.
It was very cutting edge. It was very innovative fashion.
But we also, because we popped our collars in the mid 80s and around this time, for sure, we also wore brooches. I feel like this was a pretty in pink handoff.
Definitely pretty in pink aesthetic. Yes.
Yes. I raided my mom's jewelry box. And to this day, I still have many of her brooches I wore like at the top of my shirt. And then I'd pop the collar around it. So like and of course, my hair has always been big. So like I was born in that sense in the right time period because I had big bangs. And if I curled my hair, it was Texas hair, even though I didn't live in Texas. Like that was how I looked on the outside. So I was trying really, really hard to look like a 1987, 88, 16-year-old girl. However, everything else about me was 100% Amy Grant, Michael W. Smith. You know, like it was. So when I even thought like the music of that era for me, for sure, like In Excess, which you guys, I thought was Inks. I called them Inks for a long time. I did not know.
Like, in your defense, it looks phonetically like Inks.
And we didn't have like YouTube. You didn't have. We maybe had the liners in our tape, to look at the lyrics. But there are,
Yeah.
to this day, lyrics that I'm discovering I have thought wrong all my life because I just had to hear it and guess what they said. And I
Yes, of
did that with a
course.
lot of my free time. Like I would listen to things I taped off the secular radio because my parents wouldn't have approved of regular rock and roll. They
Yeah.
barely approved of Amy Grant. So like I would listen with my headphones and my little tape and I'd be like writing down the words so that I could try to memorize them and look cool. Because again, trying to fit in. But
Yes.
you know, you get a lot of them wrong.
Yeah.
You get a lot of them wrong. I mean, I
Oh,
just
yeah.
learned that Axel F is the name of that song. I just wrote
Yeah.
do in my notebook because I was like, there's no words. And Meg, I knew what I meant. So when I hear that song, that's what I wrote.
That was just, well, you know, again, it was just that they were just very innovative with
Right.
titling that song.
Well, and you had like I taped things off of the radio and then I would so I'm making my own mixed tape kind of, but for me.
Mhm.
So then I
Mhm.
would have I would write down the order of the songs. So, you know, like this
Oh,
is like
yeah.
I loved In Excess. So like I had their tape later, not in 88, 87
Mhm.
time period because it took longer for my parents to like we had to wear them out. My brother and I. By the time I was in college, we were ordering things from Columbia House, you know, and
Oh,
doing
yeah.
the 10 tapes for 1 penny. And then that was when
Signing
I
your life
actually
away.
went back and like bought
Yes.
In Excess. And you too. There were some groups that
Yeah.
year. But really, 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 like this is where I'm like, I was so rooted in that Christian subculture. So this was the year that like Lead Me On came out from Amy
Oh
Grant.
my God. I am in a time capsule right now. I am in that moment.
Yes. Can you
I can
hear the
hear the
music?
song.
Yes.
I can hear it right
Lead
now.
me
Yes.
on, lead me on. Yes. And I was like, okay, what? But there were also like some Point of Grace songs. The actual number one song of I think 1988 on Christian music charts was this was such a moment in the Christian subculture. Sorry, you guys, if you did not grow
I
up in
know.
this world and you're like, this sounds vaguely cultish, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. You know, like I wasn't like, it was a very like closed little society. Was Thank You by Ray Boltz was Thank You
Oh
for
my
giving
gosh.
to the Lord. I was a life that was changed. And it was a story song, you guys. Each verse was like, I actually volunteered in at a camp and a little boy prayed Jesus in his heart, or like then all the people that come to you in heaven and say thank you
Oh
for
my gosh.
sacrificing.
I
Because
forgot it was like a view from heaven.
it was.
This was low-key mind control.
That's what I'm saying. It really is very, very cultish. But that was the number one song. That was not like I totally remember it. I remember every time you had to cry because you're like, yes, I am going to have all the people thanking me in heaven. So in that sense, like who was 16-year-old Kelly? A little weird, very weird, very weird. Trying to look normal.
Yes.
Not even aware completely of how weird she was. Again,
Aww.
first year in public school, my very first class, my first period of the day in public school, which my parents, we had been taught to be terrified of public school.
Yes.
My very first class was biology.
Oh no.
AKA evolution indoctrination. So like I went into that class like with my faith armor on. I was ready to like be like, you aren't going to get me, Satan. Not today. Not in this class. Like, I mean, that was how I went to school. And my second hour was health. So that had sex ed in it. Like, I mean, they were coming for me. And so I was ready to stand up.
To fight.
I was ready to stand up.
2 questions. Number 1, did you take your Bible to school?
Abso-freaking-lutely. Not just my Bible. My Bible was in a case.
Oh yeah, of course. It had to be protected. It's the word of God. Yes.
And it had like little pockets in it. So I had sermon notes in there and notes from friends and stickers.
Many notes
and
from friends.
Lots and lots of highlighters because all of my Bible had to be highlighted in different colors because I was that.
Yes.
Absolutely. I brought it to school. To like be a shield. Right?
It was a shield. Yes.
It was a shield.
Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path, and I will take it to school every day. Second question, were you allowed to date at all when you were 16?
Well, once I was 16, theoretically, yes. Again, and this doesn't necessarily, I think it's weird how this Christian subculture, like, blends with like this 1950s Americana. So you don't even necessarily have to come from that. But my parents being very, very conservative, and I am the oldest, like I was not allowed to call boys. Like if I had a friend who was a boy, they were like, you may not call him because that looks like you're chasing him. And that is not,
of course.
that is not feminine.
That's not done. Yes.
So like I had to call my boy friends and be like, hey, call me. And I had to hang up, and then he'd call me, and then we could talk. So dating, it was always like 16 was when you could date. And also I was obsessed with having a boyfriend.
Okay.
I think because
the same person.
Maybe.
We've been longtime friends now. We would have totally been friends when we were teenagers.
We would have. Obsessed. Like, I think all the Disney movies, you know, like, in the sense of, like, there weren't even, like, Little Mermaid hadn't even come out yet. You know, not like this new era of Disney, but I'm talking old school, Cinderella, Snow White, those types of stories. Coupled with, then there was, in the 80s, there was, even though I didn't watch all of them then, but there was this huge swell of teen cinema, like Pretty in Pink, like Breakfast
Club.
The John
Hughes era,
the John Hughes. So all of those, the whole point was a boyfriend girlfriend thing. You know, like it was always this romance or unrequited love, something like that. It was just such an integral part. So it was felt
embedded in culture.
Like by 16, I was so desperate for a boyfriend. Like anybody who even looked at me like cross-eyed, I was like, maybe, sure, ask me. I don't know. Like, am I attracted to you? Probably not, but no one else has asked. Like it was bad. I have my journals, Meg, and I'm scared to get them out. I thought, should I get them out for this? And I was like, I don't have the energy. I don't have the emotional energy for that right now.
Do not re-traumatize yourself. You already lived it once.
And I haven't gotten rid of them. I don't know. I guess because in some weird way, and I think hopefully this is true for all of us, even though I look back at my 16-year-old self and I'm like, girl, we'll get there, right? I mean, that's the second part of the podcast. Yeah. I have a deep tenderness for her.
Oh, of course. Yes. We're all just doing the best we can.
Yes. And for the clothes that I wore, and for who I was, and even for all of my misguidedness. You know, there's a tenderness, and I know I was doing my best. So yeah. Okay. So you are 5 years beyond me,
yes,
which is not like a great amount of time, but it's enough. When you are 16, 5 years, like what does a 16-year-old have in common with a 22-year-old? No, 21-year-old.
No, I mean, I'm 5 years behind you.
Yes. So I would have been,
you would have
like
been
when you were
in your
16.
20s.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I was 16. I turned 16 smack dab in the middle of 1993.
Okay.
So I was 16 for my entire junior year of high school. Okay. So 93, 94 range. What did I wear? So I can remember my junior year high school yearbook picture vividly. It's stamped in my mind. I cannot shake loose of it. I was wearing a rugby shirt. You may remember the era of the rugby shirt. And it was like olive green and it had like a maroon stripe.
Okay.
Maroon, like big stripe, and like a cream colored smaller stripe horizontal across the chest. Extremely flattering.
They definitely made those shirts for girls.
For girls, especially if you were well developed early in your life. So flattering. My hair was not unlike my hair right now, except for some reason in my junior high school, my yearbook picture, my hair was like, like I looked at the camera over my shoulder in just the right way that my hair looked like I had some wackadoo asymmetrical cut, like it was cut right here, and that this side was long over my shoulder. It looked like that. I hated that picture so much. I was like, how can this be fixed? I hate it because it looked like I had chopped half of my hair off just on one side.
That was a thing. I mean, so it was in that sense, people would have looked at it and been like, well, maybe she did that, you know, where
it was the 90s. So
that's what I mean.
But I lived in a small town in Oklahoma, and so my fashion choices were very not on the cutting edge. So it was a lot of jeans.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Rugby shirts, just regular T-shirts, like boxy.
Yes.
You know, like
kind of
not
still
even
oversized
cute graphic tees. Oversized. Oh my gosh, it was oversized everything.
Yeah.
I listened to music a lot. So when I turned 16, my parents bought me a Camaro. Yeah.
Wow.
It was
I
the
would have
one
been your friend.
It was the one thing. Well, it was later taken from me and traded out for something else. I only got to drive it for 1 year, basically. It was
Okay,
the
there's a
one
story.
time my parents, especially my dad, living vicariously through me, worked in my favor. He had always wanted a Camaro. So when I turned 16, he bought me a Camaro. It was electric blue. And that thing was so hot. I loved it so much. And it had a great radio and a cassette player in it. And so I listened to music a lot. We lived in the small town that I'm from in Oklahoma, was almost closer to Dallas. It's not exactly, it's like right between Dallas and Oklahoma City. But because of the way FM radio works, we couldn't get any radio stations from
yeah.
Oklahoma City. All of our radio, except for the very, very, very local stations, came from Dallas. So from the local hometown stations, I listened to a lot of 90s country. We're talking Shania Twain, Reba McEntire, Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks' song, Ain't Going Down Till the Sun Comes Up. Such a favorite of mine. I kind of got it when I was 16. As I think back and listen to it now, I'm like, this song is too racy for radio. What was even happening in 1993?
I mean, but you just kind of don't care. I think once you become a parent, you have a different sensitivity. Like you're listening to it and you have a broader sense. As a kid, you're just like, whatever.
Yes. The other thing we listened to, 92.5 or 94.5, The Edge out of Dallas, which was alternative rock. And that is what we listened to a lot. So I'm talking Radiohead's Creep. I'm talking Nirvana, Beck's song Loser, The Smashing Pumpkins, Gin Blossoms. All of that is very much the soundtrack. It's the soundtrack of my junior year. And also, speaking of soundtracks, I had and listened to on repeat the cassette tapes with the soundtrack to The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. We would just, and my friends would listen to these too.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was legit pop culture. Like it wasn't it was a kid's movie, but it was a phenomenon. And the music was so good. I mean, it's still so good it was just listened to. Yeah.
Yeah. We would just be driving around town listening to Disney soundtracks. Yeah. And that's the kind of people I hung out with. It was also a very churchy vibe. Although my parents did let me start dating when I was a freshman because I was dating a boy in my high school youth group, and my parents had known his parents for many years. And so they let us start dating. I was still dating him when I was a junior. We would.
And what does dating mean? Like that you would go on one-on-one dates? Because sometimes dating is like, that has different definitions for different people. Okay.
It was a lot of alone dating.
Okay.
A lot of alone time. We were very trusted. Yes, we were very trusted. And a lot of experimentation happened because we were so trusted. One thing we did a lot was go to the movies. We called it going to the show. And so movies like Jurassic Park, Groundhog Day, The Sandlot, Addams Family Values, The Firm, like all of those movies are just like such a moment in time for me. I didn't really watch a lot of TV back then. I think I was just like kind of just too busy already. You know, when you're a junior and you've got your driver's license and you're involved in stuff, like I watched a lot more TV when I was a kid. But when I turned 16 and got my license and started driving, that was like a big shift in terms of how much time I spent at home and just like watching TV and stuff.
Yeah.
I do know that Seinfeld was on by 93. And I do remember starting to watch that in the early seasons, not really getting it, but I've always been obsessed with all things New York City. And I loved Seinfeld so much. But like social life, I was so like everything was so about boys when I was a teenager. I did start dating my first boyfriend. In retrospect, he was a great first boyfriend. So great. But even still, there was always just like a lot of, like in my friend group, it was just, you know, all the talk all the time about boys and girls and who likes who and those kinds of things. When I was a junior, I was my first year also being in show choir. So that was a huge part of my life, being in show choir, being in choir, doing musicals. I was a theater kid. And then church youth group. We were like, that was, I know Laura and I have talked about this on the show a number of times, but like, and she's talked about it in her books and stuff, like the youth group at our church was like the social connection for a lot of people. Even people who are only lightly Christian or Christian adjacent
Yeah.
would come to our church's youth group to do things because there was always all kinds of fun programming going on
Yeah.
in the name of Jesus, of course.
That's right. I mean, I was such a youth group kid. I wouldn't say that our youth group pulled in a lot of people who were not from our church, but it was everything. And there was always like there were at least one activity a week, if not two, outside of gatherings that we just like organized on our own, or a small group leader would organize for us. So it was I was not involved in anything at school, like sports, drama, anything.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
did only things with the youth group, and it was a lot. Like it's way more than they do today because I think kids are more busy today. They have so
Yeah.
many more options.
Yes.
So sometimes we like I with my friends, or even I was a youth group leader to kids who are your age. So I was just a little bit
Mm-hmm.
older. Like I remember this era, the see you at the pole
Oh, yeah.
era. Um, it was really anchoring in a good way,
Mm-hmm.
to have these
Mm-hmm.
like friendships and
Yes.
important. So, like it's harder, I think, to find sometimes your people. If you're like, well, I'm not a sports person, or I don't really like drama or
Yes.
whatever. Like this was like a backup way to find your
Absolutely.
people. So to find a club. And so that was
It
super
was
important to me.
it was very much built-in community. And that's
Yeah.
not to say that it was like this perfect example. Like there
Right.
was cliques and popularity and
For
all kinds
sure.
of things within the youth group for sure. But because it was a Christian youth group, there was at least this sort of idea that we should be nice to everyone, that
Yeah.
Jesus would want us to be nice to everyone
Right.
and to include people. And so even kids that would have been more on the edges socially could come
Yep.
to youth group stuff and, like you said, kind of find a place.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's really true. I'm trying to think about anything else. Having a car, being involved in music and theater, having a boyfriend, um, those were the sort of like tent poles of 16-year-old.
Yeah. I didn't drive. I didn't get my license until I was 18 and in college,
Okay.
which I don't know why. Looking back, because I was pretty independent and like wanting to do things on my own. Maybe because I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to have a car. Like I have a job, but it's like very, it's more like spending money.
Yeah.
So in that sense, my life didn't change. I do think that my friends started to drive. So
Yeah.
that did, like you start to have some freedom when they can come pick you up and you can go do things with
Yes.
them. And we did like all the things that they now outlaw from teenagers doing in the car. Like how you can get your license today, but then you can only drive, at least in Minnesota, you can only drive one friend for like 6
Mm-hmm.
months, like only one friend besides your siblings in the car. We would pile into like an old
Oh
station
yeah.
wagon, like literally 16 of us, like
Absolutely. Yeah.
seatbelts. We would like lay on top of people, just like get
Absolutely.
in and we'll go whatever to the lake or to Pizza
Oh
Hut. We
yeah.
ate a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was in that sense, it was a type of freedom and carefreeness that in some ways I envy because we weren't being realistic either. Like it wasn't good, but also there
Yeah.
was just this like, it'll be fine.
Oh,
It was
absolutely.
that era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking like we had open campus for lunch at our high
Yeah.
school, and we would absolutely like run to the parking lot. Whoever's car was parked the closest, we would just open the doors. Everybody would pile in, peel out of the parking lot
Yeah.
because we're leaving campus, but we only had a short
Yeah.
time to
You've got
do
like
it.
half an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, and just like fly to the closest fast food place. Everybody pile out, eat as fast as they could, pile back in. Yeah, it was like definitely not created with safety in mind, but it was a
Right.
lot of fun.
It was fun. Yeah, that's what I mean. I feel like when I look back at and part of it is just the eras. Part of it I think is probably that age too of being
Yeah.
16. Like
Mhm.
there you should have, hopefully life doesn't look like a burden when you're
Yes.
16.
Yeah.
Like you don't have the full weight of it yet. You
Yeah.
should be able to be like, this is fun. Like getting
Yes.
to be test my grown-up wings here. Like it's fun.
Yes.
And so that should be the mark, I feel like, of 16.
I agree. All right. Well, we've kind of given you guys, we've set the stage for you of what we were like when we were 16. And again, I hope that you're thinking about what you were wearing and what you were into and what your social life looked like at 16. But we really wanted to think about what would we tell ourselves looking back now from where we sit now when we were 16. Let's talk about that when we come right back. Okay, we are back. And this week we are saying, hey, dear me at 16, here's what I want you to know. And this is kind of tricky, isn't it, Kelly? Because, like,
It is.
to be realistic, to think about, like, we could,
Yeah.
there's definitely things I could say, but my 16-year-old self would not have been able to hear it.
Yeah.
Like, no. So, like, it's kind of like, what would we say that realistically, maybe that we would want our 16-year-old selves to know? Again, we've described who we were and what we were about at that age. But Kelly, I'm so curious, what would you say to your 16-year-old self? So what are some of the things that come to mind?
The very first thing I thought of, because when I look back, and we've kind of touched on this, the obsession, the singular focus on a boyfriend,
Yes.
even though I had a wonderful, diverse friend group. I mean, diverse in some ways. So we're still within the Christian subculture bubble, okay? But
Yeah.
we're like they were, boys and girls, people of different ages, people like different things. And I had great friends. And I knew I had great friends. Like, it wasn't that I took them for granted. But what I would say to myself is, girl, your friendships are more important than the one.
Okay. Listen, spoiler alert, everybody, that was never one on my list, too.
Okay.
I'll save the rest of my list. But at the very top of my list, I was like, these boy relationships, and they are important. I will validate they were important. They will not last. They will not stand the test of time the way that some of these other friendships will decades later.
Yes. And I feel like there has been in our culture, in American culture, and much of Western culture, in my opinion, there is this like an overweightedness on finding your life partner, on finding your spouse. And the movies are about it. And it's about this relationship. And not to say that it's not important. It is important, especially if you end up having kids. Like, there's a lot that goes into that relationship. You want to find the right person. You want to make it stable. But it seems like, well, and then friends are just like, whatever, like maybe you have them, maybe you don't, maybe you leave them, maybe you outgrow them. But the importance of those friends, like, because they do stay with you. And just knowing, like, even if you're not going to stay friends with your high school 16-year-old friends your whole life, in the same way that you were then, what those friendships do as you're developing is so important. Like, so not worry, enjoy those friendships, cultivate that more than like trying to find somebody, to be with and be like, now I have a boyfriend, or now I have a girlfriend, and like at least that's settled, because it's not settled, of course, because you're 16, and also like it's just not as important as I thought it was. So that's what I would say to myself.
Do you think, I know like our culture then and now really is so geared towards finding that romantic partner, but do you think that we experienced it in a more concentrated way because of evangelical culture during this time frame? Like, I look at my daughters who are teenagers, and there's definitely a lot of dating. There's still a lot of relationship drama and whatever, but I don't hear my girls or their friends thinking like, oh, I'm going to marry this person. Like, my first boyfriend, like, I was convinced we were going to get married. And like, it wasn't even like, I would talk about that with people and nobody like even really gave it a second thought. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if that was just because of the time era, or if it was that sliver of,
I think
I don't
it's
know.
both, because I tend to think, when I look back at the 80s, so much of the pop media too, not Christian media, just regular cultural media, it was, like I said, like those John Hughes movies, there was so much about this boyfriend girlfriend thing. And again, it's not that it's not important, but it definitely led many of us just to this, like, this is what it's about. And then, yes, for sure, our faith was like, yes, that is what it's about, because that's like all that matters is families, is the era of focus on the family. And so, there was just a emphasis on that, and also on making sure that, because it was the 80s, I mean, it started in the 70s, right? It started in the 60s, 70s, like this free love, open sexual culture was very much fought against. So I think there was always this like, better to marry than to burn. Like that verse in the Bible. Meaning, if you're not aware of it, like, it's better to just get married so that you can have sex, instead of like wanting to have sex, or like possibly having sex outside of marriage. So I think there was a lot in our culture that was like, I would rather have you married at 18 than having sex at 18.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you're going to have sex outside of marriage, that's more important. So I do think that those two things went together in a way
Okay.
that it made it harder for me
Yes.
and there wasn't much talk. It wasn't that friends weren't like unimportant. We did, I remember a youth group series about the importance of friendships, but it was just, there was no way for that little cozy fire to like compete with this raging wildfire.
That's part of it too, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Of focus. So that's a
Yeah.
big one. Here's a couple little things I would say that
Okay.
also when I was 16, I didn't have great skin. I would say, girl, your acne will go away someday. Like, it's not going to be there forever. Because I was like, this is my life curse. Like, this is my cross to bear. Like, all of my friends had really beautiful, clear skin, very effortless. Mine was not that way. Every day, like it was just this constant battle. I washed my face a lot. We didn't have money for a dermatologist, so it was just like whatever I could find. It was the air of Noxema, and what was the breeze? The astringent.
Yeah,
It was
I know
like
what you're talking about.
it's like blue. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would just be like, hey girl, you know what? Like if it helps you, it doesn't help you in many ways right now because you're like, yeah, but I
Yes.
still have to go to school tomorrow with this big zit on my forehead. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it will go away someday. Your worst fears will not come true. Also, the way that you dress right now, like you mock your parents for their wedding photos, and you're like, no one will ever mock my boxy t-shirts and acid wash jeans and permed big hair, although my hair wasn't permed, but it was big.
Yeah.
You will look back someday and be like, with great tenderness, every era, you are not above the
Yeah.
eras changing and cultural shifts. Because I really thought I was. I thought
Yeah.
our people, like Swatch watches, were the pinnacle. Like it just, I did not have any scope for like how
Yeah.
small, really, you've only been alive 16 years. And when you're
Oh, I
16, you're like, I am
know.
so old. And you're like,
Yes.
sweet thing. Like you
Yes.
are in many ways. You have grown so much, but also there's
Mhm.
so much still to do.
Yes.
One thing I would say too, that I did not realize until I was much, much older, and we've talked about this in the podcast before, was not an athletic person.
Yeah.
I had very bad, well, now I know because I have very bad depth perception. So I was
Mhm.
anything that you had to use depth perception for, kickball with the youth group, volleyball, for sure baseball. I was always getting hit in the face with the ball because I couldn't tell it was coming toward me as fast as it was. That was like my position was baseball catcher. And the number of times I got up after like being knocked to the ground by some adult kicking a soccer ball, and I would catch it with my nose, and I was like embarrassed to death, and I would stand up and they were like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And I can't feel my face. It's all numb. I'm like, my nose could be on the ground, but I was always like, I'm fine, because I was conditioned as a girl and as a teenager to be like, I'm fine. So
Yeah.
I was not, this is my point, is that I was not athletic at all. And so all of those things, I was like, X, no, not for me, over
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
But as an adult, I figured out that you don't have to be a sport person to
Right.
enjoy being active, to
Oh,
enjoy like moving
yes.
your body. There was no,
Right.
it was all sports
Yeah.
or nothing. I mean, people ran, but even that kind of felt like, well, you're running because you want to run a race or you want to run a marathon. I didn't see a lot of people who were just like active.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I feel like that learning that earlier could have broadened my perspectives, to
Mhm.
try things at a younger age and be like, it doesn't have to be that you have to be coordinated. You don't even have to play on a team,
Right. Yes.
to go for a walk and enjoy it, or to go hiking or whatever, a
Yeah.
water sport or things like that. So I would love to have learned that earlier. And I think that it probably would have helped, just the way that
Mhm.
moving your body does help you with all the
Oh,
mental health
yeah.
stress and things like that. I would have done more.
Mhm.
And then my final thing is just like the overarching, what I would say to 16-year-old Kelly is life is so much bigger than you
Mhm.
think it is.
Yeah.
And that's like applies to so many things because I did live in this closed little world and it was all I knew. So I thought it was the whole world. It's like
Yeah.
living in a room in your house and thinking it's the planet. Like I
Mhm.
did not know that even in other rooms, that even other rooms existed. Like if you wanted to say like within
Yes.
Christianity, even like that, if the house is Christianity, I lived in one room and
Yes.
I didn't even know there were other rooms, much less that
Mhm.
there is a whole outside outside of the
Mhm.
house.
Yeah.
And so the things that I just didn't know that I didn't know. I
Mm.
don't know, you say, would you have listened? I think I would have been, if somebody had said that to me, I would have been too scared because I was taught that
Yes.
this room is the only safe room for sure.
Mm.
That even the other rooms in the house were dangerous, much less an outside. So if somebody was like, you don't need to be afraid, it's going to be okay. And it would maybe be good for you. I would have been like, oh no, that's like very scary.
Yes.
So I probably wouldn't have trusted it, even though I look back and I saw that there was a little bit of a spark, a little bit of a
Mm.
curiosity of the world that even though everybody was like, no, 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 like that needs to stay under wraps and you need to control that. I wasn't afraid of that spark inside of me.
Yeah.
And so like, good for you, 16-year-old Kelly. Like you were starting to think on your own. You were just, even if you're reading different Christian writers within, like, I was like curious. So why? And why do we do this? And that sort of thing. But it was certainly not something that was encouraged within the context that I was in. And
Right.
I even have like I went to a Christian college 5 minutes from my house. Like I had kind of grown up on that campus and I had a great experience there. So I don't feel like it was a bad decision, but I like literally, you guys, never looked at any other college.
Mm.
Like never. I
Yeah.
didn't even know. So I like somebody, they just sent their kid to college and they're going to Westmont, which is a Christian evangelical college in Santa Barbara, California. And I was, by the time I was 16, starting to become obsessed with California for a lot of different reasons. Like if I had known, I don't know that I would have gone there, but I didn't even know. Like I didn't think about
Yeah.
like, could I leave not even like literally my neighborhood? I was 5 minutes from home, like I stayed and I had fun, but like, man, it would have been so good. And I probably would have learned quicker that life is bigger than I think if I had
Right.
allowed myself to take those first steps to say, okay, I see this thing over there. I wonder what that would be like. And it just wasn't a part
Yeah.
of my world. So yeah, that's what I want to say. And hopefully what I'm saying to my kids today too is just like, you don't know
Right.
what you don't know. Like, why not explore? Be curious. It's okay.
I do find myself saying to my kids as they're in this age range, oh, so much of what I would have said to myself. I don't know how much of it lands for them.
Yeah.
That first one, like I said on the list, I even put in my notes the uteruses before uteruses thing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
I wish I would have learned that so much earlier. And truly, some of the friends, not all of those friendships, but Laura Tremaine being somebody that I met when I was 16 and like our little friend group, like they really have
Yeah.
been lifelong friends. And I don't even know if I would have been able to. I think on the one hand, I would have been like, of course they're going to be my friends forever. I wouldn't have appreciated how rare it is to have those
Yeah.
actual lifelong friendships. And
Yeah.
and I think that maybe I would have handled those friendships with care if I had known
Mm.
and how long they were going to last instead of taking them for granted, which I very much did. I was not a good friend when I was a teenager, because I was so boy crazy.
Yeah.
Speaking of one of the other things I would tell myself is you will get your heart broken. My one and only heartbreak
Mm.
happened when I was 16, towards the end, or actually the summer after my junior year, between my junior and senior year. Only heartbreak. You will get your heart broken. You will survive. It was the
Yeah.
kind of heartbreak where I couldn't eat. I
Yeah.
was physically sick with heartache. Um, but in a lot of ways, like I could not have heard this when I was 16 for sure. But in a lot of ways, it's kind of good to have your heart broken. I think it helps you to appreciate the angst, I feel like, of art, of music, of
Yeah.
literature, when you know that specific kind of heartbreak. I say that with caution. I do think that sometimes our culture is a little too focused on suffering, and I don't want to
Yeah.
encourage that. But if heartbreak should happen, I think that it can find redemption in the most unlikely of places. And so I would have definitely said, not from my first high school boyfriend, who was great and he didn't break my heart. We were pioneers of the conscious uncoupling.
Oh,
We
very
were
nice.
teenagers.
Okay. But even that is impressive, really, Meg. Like to
We had
say,
Yes.
at that age to be like, we can both see that this is run its course. That's
Yeah.
really mature.
We'd been dating for 2 years. We absolutely thought we were going to get married, but he was a year ahead of me. He graduated and was going off to school. And we both were just like, you know what? No, let's don't keep doing this. You're going to
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
Let's see what else is out there. It was a wonderful, wonderful relationship and a wonderful breakup. The boy I dated after that is the boy who broke my heart. And I think it was good in retrospect.
Yeah.
So I would have prepared myself that that's going to happen. On the lighter end of things, I would have said, stop trying to hide your freckles. Like, freckles have happened to you. Okay? Nobody wore sunscreen.
Yeah.
You're a freaking Scotch-Irish girl out here baking in the sun, going to tanning beds. Yes, you have freckles.
And oil. We put oil on. Not only did we not put on sunscreen, we brought baby oil to the beach. Yes. The pool.
So stop going to the Clinique makeup counter with your mother and asking for like the heaviest coverage possible to cover your freckles. They're a part of you. Just embrace them because they're never going to go away.
Like, make peace with this. It's okay. I think that, yes, we're trying to hide things that we feel like make us unique.
Yes.
And so we're saying, hey, this is a unique thing. It's okay. Embrace it.
Embrace it. Along those lines, I would have started, I wish I could have told myself, I wish I would have started beating this drum for myself when I was 16. We didn't have the words, I don't think, when we were teenagers, Kelly, but I would have told 16-year-old Meg, all bodies are good bodies.
Yes.
I have tried to drill that into all of my children. All bodies are good bodies. I remember it was when I was 16 also, overhearing for the first time another girl saying something about a body that was my size that was bad. I can remember it vividly. I was in drama class because I was a theater kid. But we were like, our theater teacher was flighty AF. Okay. And so we had a lot of free time in that class. And so there was 4 of us who kind of sat in a corner of the room. There was me, who was a junior, 2 senior boys, and a freshman cheerleader. And the freshman cheerleader was teeny tiny, so petite by nature. She still is to this day. I just saw her recently because Oklahoma is the smallest world that there is. But I remember she was talking to those 2 senior boys, and I was like reading a book, but I was listening to what they were saying. And they were talking about how girls' size clothes are so different from boys' clothes. And she was saying like a size 10 is like huge. And I, of course, wore a size 10. And it was the first time it occurred to me, like, I'm big? Like, okay. And it was just like a passing thing that she was like, she was 14. She was just saying what she was saying. There's nothing about that. It was just like the first time that it was like the moment I like can trace back to like not feeling good about my body.
Yeah.
And that's something a message, thing that I've been grappling with for years. And so if I could have in that instant been like, no, it's okay. All bodies are good bodies, and just kept reminding myself of that, teaching myself that along the way. Oh gosh, I wish I could have.
That's such a good one, Meg. That's such a good one.
I really do try to, my children are sick of me saying it. I don't care. I hope that is the soundtrack that they can never shake themselves from. All bodies are good bodies. Your body is going to has done, and it's going to do so many amazing things.
Yeah.
So good. So this is very random. But when I was a junior in high school, a 16-year-old, I thought that I wanted to go to school for hotel and restaurant management. And I had this vision, this dream of opening this cozy restaurant that was, I didn't even care about the food. I wasn't even daydreaming about the food. I was thinking of the feeling that it created. The ambiance, the experience of it all. So I would tell 16-year-old self, you know what, hold on to that dream. It's not going to play out the way that you're envisioning right now, but that idea of hosting people and creating a thing, creating a space, hang on to that idea. It's going to come back in ways you may not expect.
Yeah.
And I would say the very last thing I would tell myself is trust your intuition. I know that you think that sounds new age.
Right. So you would have been like, I was with you up until here, but now we've like gone into the like territory,
Yes,
because
Frank
this was still
Peretti.
like the satanic panic was like in the late
Yes.
80s. So that was a big
Yes.
thing. And so not the new age stuff. No, ma'am. Didn't you read
Yeah.
Frank Peretti?
I was going to say Frank Peretti has entered the chat.
Exactly.
And people outside of our bubble are like, who now? But if you know, you know.
That's right.
I would say, like, if I had to say in a way that my 16-year-old self would understand, trust the Holy Spirit, trust that bigger thing that is inside of you. And I would hope that over time I would come to this conclusion earlier than I have in actual reality, that you already have everything that you need inside. Within you. You have it all. You can trust that. And that's another thing that I'm constantly drilling into my kids. Trust yourself, trust yourself, trust yourself. I could have saved myself a lot of heartache and from being in bad situations and explored new things. Like, that could have been so different if I would have really, really believed that I could trust myself from the time I was 16 onward. Kelly, before we wrap up, I have one last question, and you didn't know I was going to ask you, so I'm putting you on the spot. Knowing what you know now, would you have rather been a 16-year-old in was it 88?
88, yeah, that's when I turned 16.
Would you have rather been 16 in 1988 or 2023?
I mean, knowing what I know now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because it's not, it would be 16 now, right? It's not like me.
16 now. Would you rather have had your 16-year-old experience now or then?
I mean, it's so hard to say, because how can you say that? But I've got to say, I would stick with 1988. The world seems more complicated today.
Yes.
So even though there are things I look back and I'm like, gosh, I would have loved to have done that differently, or have known that, or had somebody in my life that would have steered me here. It just is, it seems more complex. And I feel like we've talked about this before, because I'll be interested to hear your answer too. But, we talk about weddings. We both got married before Pinterest. So our weddings were so, like, we just did what people told us to do, what was like, we invited the people, my dresses, like my dress was cute, but what I made my bridesmaids wear, I should probably have to go to purgatory for a little while, because it was not a good look. Bright, bright blue, you guys, because I was like, I love the Caribbean water, and it was satin.
Of course, mine are satin too.
Oh my gosh.
Lavender.
Yeah, I almost went with like lavender or pink because Father of the Bride. But at the same time, even though there's so many things, I see weddings today, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful and it's so simple, and it really reflects who those people are and all of that. But it's also so much pressure.
Yes.
Pressure and money. And so, like, we just kind of followed the script. Like, there was this pre-described, like, you get a boyfriend, you turn 16, you date. It was like things were handed more to us, and there's a definite downside. But also, I can see how when you are building a life, and this is a Father Richard Rohr concept, where he's like, you do need some stability when you're a kid, where things are kind of just handed to you to build your own container. Like, then it will fall apart. You may tear it apart. Life will tear it apart. But like, without some stability, and I feel like kids today, because of things that have happened, our political situations, the pandemic, it's harder. Like, they haven't had as much stability. So even though they do have so much potential, and I love Gen Z and their energy and their passion, and they're just like, refusal to take it. Like, no, ma'am. They, like, we got handed the script and we were like, okay, I'll read this part. I don't exactly understand, but all right. And they're just like, hell no. Like, no. Like, they don't. So very different. But I think I would stick with 1988. What about you?
I also feel conflicted, because there is so much, having two Gen Z teenagers. I love this generation. I am jealous of them in a lot of ways. Like you said, there's a refusal to just accept things as they are that I am envious of, in a sense, and also an acceptance of other perspectives, and
an awareness of other perspectives.
Oh, awareness.
An awareness first, and then like just a okayness with it, not a fear.
Yeah. I think the big thing, though, that makes me say I will take my 1993 16-year-old experience is the social media of it all. I have one child for whom social media does not have that big of an impact on her life. She's not that active on it. And then I have one child who, like, filters everything through what people might say or think or analyze or blah, blah, blah because of social media.
Yep.
And so I've seen both ends of the spectrum, but man, just how like how simple and naive we were in a lot of ways in 93 as opposed to 2023. I think I would choose that, even though that's not to say there aren't some really wonderful things about being a teenager right now.
Right.
But I think that because of the social media aspect, I might say I'll take 93.
Yeah.
So, okay. This has been so good. I love a nostalgia conversation. Awesomes. First of all, we would love to hear from you. So come and tell us. We'll have some questions out there on social media, that big, bad, evil social media that I was just talking about. We'll have questions for you guys. So you can tell us about yourselves as 16-year-olds and what you might like to tell yourself. But Kelly, in the meantime, if people want to find you to talk about this or anything, where can we find you all around the web?
On social media. And you can find me for sure in the Sorta Awesome Hangout, because that's where I am on Facebook, but also on Instagram and on Threads. I'm at Kelly Gordon MN. Also on Twitter still some, but my kids have even noticed. They're like, if they come up in the morning and they're like, so you're scrolling Threads now instead of Twitter. And I'm like, yes, I am. I guess it's kind of replacing my social media, but you can find me at that handle almost anywhere.
I haven't opened Threads in a while. I loved it so much at the beginning, but have they made any changes to where you just see people that you're following in your main feed?
No, you do see more than just the people you're following.
Okay.
But they're
so
working
annoyed.
on the algorithm. And the big thing for me, and this just happened the last week, is it's now on desktop. It took them forever.
Ooh, okay. That's a good development.
In fact, I used a GIF because you'll pry my GIFs out of my cold, dead fingers. Like my kids are like, Mom, they're not cool. And I'm like, I don't care. This is where I die. And it was like how you doing? It was like Threads on desktop. I was like, this is a game changer because now I can read it easier.
Thank you.
And post easier if I'm just like, posting an article or whatever. So I feel like Threads, if you guys are not on Threads yet, you're on Instagram, you already have a Threads account then, because that's how it works. It's like the beginning days of Twitter. It really is. It's a fun place. It feels more encouraging. It's not as news centric. It doesn't feel as complainy. They are actively devaluing news in their algorithms because they don't want it to be that. So like if you post a link, they're like, I'm not maybe going to show that to as many people because,
Okay.
So anyway, it's a fun place. You can come find me there or on Instagram or in the Hangout.
Okay. Well, my social media allergy's been acting up real bad this summer, so it's hard to find me, but if you want to.
If you want to try to find Meg.
At Sorta Awesome Meg. But seriously, I loved Threads so much. So I'm gonna really make an effort to get back in there and like get back into it. I just was getting so annoyed because it felt like my feed was just all people that I did not know that Meta had decided I might be interested in. And I really genuinely just would like, it doesn't even have to be exclusively people I know, but could I see a few people that I know?
Okay, so go try it again because I think as more and more people have joined, so then you have the option just to be like, do you want to follow everybody you follow on Instagram? So I see more and more people that I know there every day. And so now I would say my thread is probably 80% people I know.
Okay.
At least whether in real life or on social media. No. You know what I'm saying?
I will give it another try. So find me. I'm at Sorta Awesome Meg there too. You can find Sorta Awesome by searching Sorta Awesome, whatever social media platform you're on. We would love to have you there. And again, come over and join us in the Hangout. That's where the magic happens. So awesome. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see y'all next time.